As ever, Liverpool have done their business pretty early, this time with their manager. Klopp has left the building and Arne Slot is now going to be ready to enter the hot seat at Liverpool. But how on earth does he fill the biggest shoes in football, I think, when it comes to this summer? First of all, do you think this is the kind of right decision? There was there was Amorim, there was Alonso, there's a few people sort of knocking about, and we're going to get into the changes that he should or could make. Are you happy with him as the option to take over from Klopp? I mean, it's kind of impossible, isn't it?
It's an impossible job, right? And people always talk about being the man after the man, and it's difficult. But what Liverpool are doing, and I commend them for this, is they're building a strong backroom. They're building a strong hierarchical structure there. And so Slot's just going to be asked to coach. They've stripped back the responsibilities that the head coach had when Jurgen Klopp was there, because of course he's Jurgen Klopp. He's going to have way more responsibilities than Arne Slot, who's yet to prove it at the highest level. Michael Edwards is being brought back in. CEO Richard Hughes as well is being brought in. And so they're building a strong structure there to allow the coach to do what he does best and not have to deal with the other issues when it comes to football. In terms of style of play, it's going to be different to Jurgen Klopp, and it's going to take him some time to embed his ideas. There are players there that have only known, when playing at the top level, only known Jurgen Klopp as their manager. He was at Liverpool for 8 years. It's a very, very difficult job to walk into. But Arne Slot seems like he's up for it. He talked very openly, maybe a bit too openly, when he was still final manager about wanting the Liverpool job.
I found that really weird.
I found that quite disrespectful. They were going to play a game against Go Ahead Eagles. He was talking about how his team is talking to Liverpool, and I thought that was just a little bit, show some decorum, act like you've been there before. But Liverpool fans just have to wait and see. I think it's never a perfect solution. I think it's almost, when people try and declare this manager's the next one or this manager's not good enough, we don't know until they step into the job. We don't know until we see his first press conference in terms of how he deals with the pressure, in terms of how he deals with the media, in terms of how he deals with the players. But for Liverpool, I think the best thing that they have done since announcing the departure of Jurgen Klopp is strengthening the hierarchical structure at the club.
In terms of bringing players in and letting players go, there are big decisions to be made there. Enormous decision when it comes to that, because once Klopp has left and you're left with a group that is kind of just a longing for him, sort of not rubbing up those personalities the wrong way, or you look at Arteta and what he has done. He obviously a very different environment that he was stepping into, but he knew what his culture was in terms of what he wanted, and he was pretty ruthless in terms of some of the players that he had to kind of move on. And at some point there are some really big decisions to be made in terms of the positions of Trent and Salah, but also Trent and Salah staying at the club. Van Dijk, how long is he going to stay? We saw how upset he was at the final whistle in that game against Wolves. So in terms of players coming in, Johan Bakayoko, really tricky winger, similar to Doku. He's been linked with the club. Kweku as well, currently at Benfica, was fantastic for Arne Slot at Feyenoord. In terms of bringing in players, we'll get to departures in a second. Should he go down that route of players he knows? We've seen that goes all the way back to sort of to Brian Clough. He would have John Robertson and he'd take him to every club that he went to kind of go, look, this, if you've got any questions, kind of here's your guy, which can kind of create a bit of a shortcut to get to the destination that he wants. Yeah. Would you go down that road? It's not worked for someone like Ten Hag, let's say.
I don't think Liverpool will go down that road, because when Jurgen Klopp first came to Liverpool, he wanted some players that they didn't go and get. He wanted Mario Götze. He wanted players that he had worked with before at Borussia Dortmund, and they provided them with different options. They provided them with Sadio Mane, and they provided them with Mo Salah. We know how that story ended. Yeah. And so I think it's going to be a collaboration. I don't think it's going to be an Eric Ten Hag situation where they're going to allow him to spend £80 million on a winger that doesn't play good football. I think they're going to have to ask him what he wants, and then they'll come with a list of players that fit that profile, and then go from there, because they have to be realistic about the situation. Arne Slot might not work. They need to bring in players that work for Liverpool, and if another manager was to come in midway through the season, those players work under that manager, because it's not the same as Jurgen Klopp, where you know that no matter where we finish in the first season, we're going to stick with this guy because he's one of the 2 or 3 best managers in world football. Liverpool, if you assess their team right now, they've got some areas to improve. I think before the beginning of the season, we probably pointed to their attacking options as being their strongest part of their side. Now we're seeing Darwin Núñez not clapping for Klopp when he's walking down and parading himself at Anfield. We're seeing Mo Salah, who maybe doesn't look the same as he looked a couple of seasons ago. Luis Diaz, who's great, but maybe hasn't filled the void of Sadio Mane as much as Liverpool fans would have expected. And so there's all of a sudden there's question marks about these players. Cody Gakpo I really like, and I think that he's a player that maybe under Arne Slot we'll see the best of him. But there are positions and situations that Liverpool have to address. For me, the biggest one is Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is their vice captain. Yeah. He's got a year left on his contract. Why hasn't that been tied up? We saw how emotional he was, and we know how much of a Klopp player that he is. I know that Real Madrid are looking for a right back. Trent, number 66, Galactico at Bernabeu, it makes sense to me. So you need to sort that situation out ASAP. There's a reason why you made him your assistant captain. There's a reason why Liverpool, despite all the noise around other players, have tried to keep that noise away from Trent. He is so imperative to the soul and the feeling of such an emotional football club. And so that's an issue that I think they have to address straight away.
Yeah, I think it's interesting we talk about him at Real Madrid. Like, we've done a video talking about Real Madrid and Toni Kroos, and you think about that long range of passing. The copy and paste that can naturally be done when you go, oh, look, that's Arne Slot, that's how they play. You bring it over to Liverpool, this is how it should work, and these are the problems that you might have with it. I think that is, it's understandable, and there will be elements to that, but I think you also have to see what players you've got and work from that starting point as well. And Trent Alexander-Arnold is part of that. Like, he could become an 8. Certainly, you've got Conor Bradley, who's been really, really good this season and has got that, the energy and the malleability, if that's even a word, to be utilised there. But the short passing that Arne Slot generally likes is not what happens at Liverpool, because you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold. And if you watch any clips of Trent, when he gets the ball, everyone runs away from him, because they know that he is world class at what he does. So to not utilise that and make Alexander-Arnold play short passes all the time is stupid to me. And I think Arne Slot will understand that as well. So in terms of, I guess, the flexibility of both the players and the manager, it comes down to Arne Slot as well, in terms of, can you make it work with Alexander-Arnold, and can you tweak your philosophy a touch to allow for this team to thrive? Because without the ball, Arne Slot, I think, is quite similar to Liverpool in terms of wants to press, wants to get at them, wants to leave 2 at the back, all of those elements. It's in build-up that's going to be difficult. So I think you want to do exactly what you've said there. And I think you've got to capture Alexander-Arnold's heart a little bit, because Klopp's had it. Of course, he's a Liverpool man. But you're right, the bright lights of Real Madrid, they continue to shine as brightly as they've ever done.
Can I ask you a question though, Jim?
Yeah.
In terms of philosophy, and we've seen that at big football clubs, it was boring Arsenal before Arsene Wenger came in. He changed the philosophy of the football club, and it meant that any manager that came in after Arsene Wenger, we saw with Emery, it didn't work in terms of his style of football. They have to kind of align to philosophy and the playing style that legendary managers implemented. At Manchester United, is attack, wire players, and so any manager that comes in that doesn't align with that, i.e. Jose Mourinho, out the door very, very quickly. Has Jurgen Klopp done enough of a job at Liverpool to embed his philosophy where now any manager that comes in is expected to play similar football to that of Jurgen Klopp?
I think it's a great question. It's a question I asked Chris Pajak from the Redmen TV, the first ever football fan channel, great channel, Liverpool channel. And he said, no, that's Liverpool now. That's us. That's what we're about. Because I think it's about believing and being proactive. And again, some of the elements of Arne Slot, and I think most teams now need that. And the intensity of it, it's fun. And I think they would be a bit bored if it was a different style of play. That said, you don't always play that way against every team when other teams just let you have the ball. And I think actually Jurgen Klopp has kind of moved towards that and looked to get Alexander-Arnold in that box. Every team has a box now, and again, they will continue to do when it comes to Arne Slot, I think, as well, because you need those 4 in midfield, and Alexander-Arnold needs to be a part of that when they've got the ball, because that's kind of when he's at his best. I think it will have to be that. Certainly that intensity without the ball will have to be that, and I think in terms of sort of that tempo of how they play with it, Arne Slot as well. Okay, maybe it's short passes, but they do move up the pitch quite quickly. So I think there'll just need to be a bit of give and take in terms of allowing Alexander-Arnold to be him. If you've got Toni Kroos, if you've got Alexander-Arnold, if you've got Pirlo, if you've got those players, you let them play in those deep waters, but you also let them play those long passes. Yeah. So don't miss out on that. The final question for me, I think Van Dijk will be great in this team. I think with 2 at the back and a new system, he'll be crucial. Salah. How do we feel about Salah here? I think there is an enormous decision to be made on Mohamed Salah this summer, because if he is to play the way that Arne plays, it will be a slightly different role, which could work for him. Yeah. It could also be one where he could be quite frustrating for the team as well. How do you see it?
So we've talked before about Mo Salah, and I think I err on the side of Mo Salah has been a great servant and still a top 5 Premier League player, but he's descending right now. This is the back end of Mo Salah's prime, and we saw it towards the back end of this season. But you've always been on the mindset, be careful, because we've seen this happen before where you write off a player and all of a sudden they're back to their very best. We saw it with Virgil van Dijk. People wrote him off, and this season we've seen him back to his very best. And so that's the decision that has to be made. It's whether the offer comes in is big enough. Yeah. Because Saudi Arabia is always going to be there for Mo Salah. He's the most famous Muslim footballer in the world. Going to play in Saudi Arabia just makes sense. How much money you can get from Mo Salah at this stage of his career remains to be seen, and whether that Saudi interest is as strong this season. But that is the key decision, right? And for me, I think it's always better to go a year too early than a year too late. Not just for the team's sake, but for the player's legacy's sake. We don't want to see a decline in Mo Salah at Liverpool, where next season he turns up, he scores you 9 league goals, so all of a sudden your thoughts and memories of this guy who was so electric and so amazing for you is slightly tarnished. And Liverpool fans are quite good in terms of compartmentalising. They're not too reactive when it comes to their legends. They do back them till the very end. But I think for Mo Salah and for Liverpool, especially with Jurgen Klopp leaving, this might be the best time for him to maybe say goodbye to Liverpool and try a different challenge. But it's whether you can get the money that you think you deserve for Mo Salah at this point.
And the replacement of goals and output, right? I think that's a big part of this. I'm a massive fan of Harvey Elliott. I think there's elements that you could put him in that position. You then lack a little bit of pace, maybe kind of in behind at times, which I know Salah in the new role with Arne wouldn't totally do that. If it was me, I think the thing I would be wary of is trying to change too much, because that becomes a story. Yeah. And I think if it was me, I would make Van Dijk important, I would make Salah important, and I would make Trent important in that first year, and see. See, are they good enough? Is it working? Can you get them to where you want them to be? And I think the big question mark is Alexander-Arnold. What options does he have when he gets the ball and he gets his head up? And for Salah, can he play a bit narrower than he has done previously? If they can do that, then all's well and good, and you've got another good season, because I think the replacement is going to be tricky to find. And it will be a thing.
Does Spurs not think the same thing when it's very different, because Gareth Bale was ascending and he was very much in the infancy in terms of being a world-class player. But Spurs thought the same thing when they had to sell Gareth Bale to Real Madrid. And eventually they became a more consistent team and a better team as a result of the vacuum that he left, the allowance of other players to flourish. And I feel like Salah takes up so much oxygen at Liverpool because he is a legend. He's one of their greatest ever players. I think maybe moving on from him allows you to see different options that you might not have seen when he's still there. I know he provides so many goal-scoring opportunities or options for them, but this season we saw him a little bit profligate in front of goal in terms of that game against Manchester United at Old Trafford, where if he had scored one or two of the chances he was given, it might have been a completely different title race. And so I don't necessarily think that letting go of Mo Salah is the worst thing in the world, but also keeping Mo Salah is not the worst thing in the world, because he's one of the best players in the world.